Hello everybody, welcome back to the WTF1 podcast. We're here for the Belgian Grand Prix, a race that was slightly disappointing, but we are gonna just keep it positive, keep it rolling. My name's Matt, of course, and joining me once again is the WTF1 founder and quite possibly the next Nivea Skin ambassador, Tom Bellingham, 47 years old. How are you, Tom?
I'm all right. People genuinely thought I was 45 years old in that other podcast where we joked that I was 45 years old, and they're like, wait, what? And also, we're not sponsored by Nivea, just hashtag not an ad.
Other skin products are available. But Tom, how old are you? Just
31.
Everybody. 31 years old, and you don't look a day over fetus. Let's talk about the Belgian Grand Prix anyway. Some 3-word race reviews. Rune_M_, that was boring. Felix.Girding, Ferrari is slow. M_Defluente, we needed rain. And Daza 21, close to tattoo. Yeah. For Spa, Tommy, that was boring. Rune M is right.
It was. It's not. We had some great midfield battles. Unfortunately, we sound like a bit of a broken record where people are quick to jump on people complaining about Mercedes. And obviously, we applaud them for how brilliant they are and how well Verstappen's driving as well to be in that mix. But I don't think it's wrong to complain that you essentially we're having the same podium every single weekend and the midfield battle. Like in other sports, you don't go, oh, well, it was rubbish, but did you see this happening somewhere completely different? So we want to see racing at the front. The midfield is always amazing, and we say it all the time, like there's the jokes of the Formula 1.5 and stuff, isn't there? Which is always super close. But yeah, just disappointing about the front, because thought we might at least get a race, but no.
I think it's accentuated at the moment with Bottas just not particularly performing, just not seeming to turn up at all now. At the start of the season, we hoped that maybe he'd be able to take it to Hamilton, and he did, obviously leading the championship right at the start. But after that, he's tailed off again, and it's just disappointing to see that whenever we see Hamilton on pole, leading lap 1, I'd love to know the statistics of how many times he has lost a race to Bottas after leading after lap 1, because I bet the percentage is very, very low indeed. And you know, we'll get onto your 3-word race review, Tommy, which talks a little bit deeper into that. But my 3-word race review is Ricardo another level. Talking about Danny Ric, of course, in that Renault just turning up absolutely quick as anything around Spa. Their power unit just seemingly one of the best on the grid, if not the best. The Mercedes obviously had a bit more downforce. But either way, Renault looking extremely quick at the end. Ricardo snatching fastest lap. And just really looking to next weekend as well, just a little bit, and Monza, Renault are looking unbelievably strong.
They are, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's track dependent. Renault still aren't really where they need to be. Like we're saying, for whatever reason, they just seem to be really good at this sort of skinny wing setup. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, what a performance. One of the best of the year, I must say. And let's be honest, that car he has not been able to show his true talent in. And he gets one race this year at Spa where the car is extremely well suited, and he delivers. And what a performance. I genuinely can't think of anything more he could have done that weekend. Nailed it in qualifying, put in the fastest lap of the race, almost got Verstappen if maybe there'd been 3 or 4 more laps, although I guess they were managing the gap with their tyres anyway. But interestingly, something I read today is they actually did fastest lap of the race without Cyril Abiteboul's permission.
Oh.
Which is a bit cheeky. But yeah, apparently there was a discussion about it, whether they wanted to pit, because obviously had quite a buffer to Ocon. I don't think a pit stop, but there was talk of, should we go for fastest lap? And Renault decided, no, it's not really worth the risk when we've got this amazing P4 result. And then on the penultimate lap, Danny Ric did, I think the first half of his lap, he was 0.5 up on the best he'd ever done. And they were like, hang on a minute, we could actually genuinely do this. So without Cyril Abiteboul's permission, him and his engineer went rogue and whacked the engine up to full, and he just absolutely went ham. And yeah, fastest lap of the race, so an extra point.
I wonder if there'll be some sort of repercussions for that, because I imagine everything has to go through Cyril. Even if they did manage to get fastest lap and whatnot, it's still undercutting the boss, isn't it? Which is
although he did joke about it.
Strange.
He does know. He joked about it and was like, "I'm glad they went against me." But yeah, it is quite a funny story when it works. But if he'd binned it in the wall, we'd be having a very different conversation, wouldn't we? Absolutely.
I think Danny Rick said that he sent it. Absolutely licked the stamp and sent it for around that that last lap. Dawid Floric 10 says, can Daniel Ricciardo score a podium before leaving for McLaren? I think Monza's definitely their best chance. When you think of the other tracks coming up, I don't think there's really anything, if we're looking at that skinny wing setup, that suits. I don't think there's a more high-speed track you can really rely on than Monza.
But Bahrain Outer?
I think
true. They're the two
true,
chances I think he's got.
I think Bahrain Outer will be maybe slightly less of a chance, just purely because I think it will be a little bit more of a lottery in that midfield as to who gets to that sort of 4th, 5th position, just purely from the fact it's a really short lap and therefore qualifying will be ridiculously close.
Oh, yeah.
So any sort of error, you could fall down the grid quite rapidly. But yeah, Bahrain Outer for sure will be a great chance for them, and I think Monza as well. That's going to be their best chance. If they don't get podiums there, I don't see that happening really, unless we have a ridiculously crazy race.
Me neither. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Renault still not where they want to be, I guess. But for whatever reason, the low drag, low downforce, they just love that car in that skinny wing setup. And Monza last year was exactly the same. They finished 4th and 5th, which obviously they were only beaten by Charles Leclerc and 2 Mercedes. And this year Ferrari are nowhere. So in theory, they should be the second best car in Monza. So this is a huge opportunity for Renault and Cyril to get that tattoo that someone mentioned earlier in the three-word race reviews.
It's nice to hear, isn't it, that Renault could be the second fastest car around Monza. That's not something we've heard for a very, very long time. Winchy tweets says, are Renault now where we thought they would be last year? But as Tommy's already mentioned, it's the interesting story around that midfield is that each team seems to have a certain track or certain sort of characteristics of a track where they're stronger. So Renault will only have these few to really take advantage of, and then the pendulum will shift back to the likes of McLaren and Racing Point, where they rely a little bit more on the downforce side of things. So Renault aren't the second fastest car throughout the season. So they're probably still not particularly happy with where they are, but at least they've got a certain setup of the car where they can go, yeah, this works.
Yeah, I don't want to be too negative on it and be like, well, actually they're still terrible, because they deserve to be having a good race now, and they should absolutely be enjoying it. But at the same time, they're behind McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. With the same engine, with the same engine, and before this weekend, they were quite a way off the battle, that kind of midfield battle, which is between Ferrari, Racing Point, and McLaren and themselves. So it really is track dependent. They need to make the most of these races, and like you say, they're going to be looking at 3 and 4. They need to get P3 and P4 because that's going to be huge for their constructors' title bid.
Absolutely,
title bid.
And
let's
not forget.
Not for. Yeah. Don't think they're going to catch Mercedes, but yeah,
we never know. You never know.
Every race at Monza.
It depends. It depends how far Renault off the pace. If they're only a few tenths off Mercedes somehow, then we could be in for an interesting race. But yeah, let's not forget that Renault were out of the points only a few races ago. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember exactly which one. Was it Silverstone?
I'm trying to remember. Silverstone. They were really woeful, weren't they? So.
Yeah. So that comes back to the whole pendulum shifting, and the fact that it does change a lot in that midfield. Right, Tommy, your 3-word race review.
Mine is I miss Rosberg.
Never thought those 3 words would be uttered from your mouth.
Yeah. Now I wrote this on my Twitter as well, And don't get me wrong, I do not think that Nico Rosberg would have won another title. I think he's very underrated, and we did a podcast, didn't we, about underrated drivers, and we at the time when we did it, we said Nico Rosberg, and we were like, we really didn't appreciate him enough at the time, because now we're seeing what Bottas is doing against Hamilton. The thing I miss about Rosberg is the fact this is more it's more a review about Bottas, really, in the fact that Hamilton does not see Bottas at all as a title contender. Bottas loves to pretend that he's in the title fight. He has this plan. He's Bottas 3.0. He's eating his porridge, all this kind of stuff. But I genuinely can't think of a time where he's really got under Hamilton's skin. And I was thinking about this, that it may sound absolutely ludicrous, but if Bottas wants to win a world title, it genuinely wouldn't have been the biggest issue if he'd sent it up to La Source and they'd crashed into each other, because that would send a message to Hamilton of, okay, I'm genuinely serious about this. I want to win the title. I'm going to fight you. But he's never shown that. And I don't think that Hamilton sees him as a threat at all. Examples, even when Rosberg didn't do it. I'm thinking Sochi, when he dived up the inside and completely locked up and missed it. But all those things he was doing, like parking it at Monaco, not turning into the corner properly at Austria, it all got into Hamilton's head to the point where when there was that perfect storm of him having reliabilities, he could take the title fight to Hamilton. And Bottas is not doing that at all.
No, he's not, and that's something I've said a lot throughout a lot of the podcast, is that mental side. Bottas is very much just a number two driver, as much as he doesn't want to admit it, and maybe he isn't in his own head, but he just doesn't have the racecraft and the talent in order to take it to Hamilton week in, week out. Sure, he's taken some poles, but he hasn't converted every pole into a victory. And the fact that he's behind Verstappen in the World Championship when he is in a Red Bull and Bottas is in a Mercedes is just, firstly, testament, I tweeted before, it's testament to Verstappen's unbelievable performance this year, but also Bottas underperforming, or at least that, not even underperforming, just the fact that that is his amount of talent. He might have a few races where the car's completely dialed in, Russia, for example, and he'll win the race. But he doesn't take it to Hamilton nearly enough in order to get into his head, as you say. And it was such an example where Bottas didn't have the racecraft in his head to just back off Hamilton a little bit going into Eau Rouge and Radion to then take the slipstream towards La Source. Instead, I haven't seen the onboard, but instead, what I'm understanding is that he followed too quickly, got a little bit of a swapper or a little bit out of shape over Radion, and then he was nowhere near. Like, how he hasn't taken the lead on lap one is beyond me.
And he had 2 attempts because there was a safety car. And
where he was just sleeping.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? He absolutely slept on that safety car.
Him, didn't he? On the safety car, it seemed like.
Yeah, and then Verstappen got a little bit.
But he didn't have the setup. But yeah, it's disappointing. But I think the next question goes on about Bottas underperforming anyway.
It does. XJ, would you say Bottas is underperforming, or is Hamilton just in such a league of his own? It's unfair to compare the two drivers. I mean, obviously, we're going to compare. They're the teammates. That's the only true comparison we can have of anyone, of any drivers. So I think, going back to what I said previously, I don't think Bottas is necessarily underperforming. I just think he is at almost his peak of his talent. As I say, he will have a few weekends that are stellar, but I just don't think he has the minerals week in, week out, all these, and the adaptability at all of these tracks to be good at them.
It's really weird. We said this on another podcast. Albon being half a second behind Verstappen puts him 6 or 7 places behind Verstappen because of that midfield. In that race, Bottas was half a second behind Hamilton in qualifying, and he was second on the grid. So
very luckily, actually,
exactly.
As well.
So it's very right. Here's an interesting question for you, and a theory. The Bottas, we kind of laud him as the perfect number 2 driver, right? And Hamilton said some interesting comments after the race. I don't know if you saw them, heard them, about Alex Albon and how Verstappen is essentially racing on his own. and he doesn't have the support of his teammate being up there, and that's why Red Bull aren't challenging Mercedes at all for the title, and they're never going to get in the mix because they can't play any interesting strategies or anything. Now, if Daniel Ricciardo was still at Red Bull and was able to perform on Verstappen's level and beating Valtteri in the races like Verstappen was, maybe we'd be having the conversation about Bottas like Albon, where Mercedes have to think, we're not going to win the Constructors' title here if we're getting our second car beaten. Even if Hamilton wins the driver's title, if Red Bull are finishing second and third every race and Bottas isn't performing, but instead what's happening is their car is leaps and bounds ahead, and even when he's having a poor race, he can still finish second or third. So we call him a perfect number 2 driver. So it really is that I find the situation quite fascinating between Albon and Bottas, that they're both not really performing against really, really good teammates. And one is lauded as the perfect second driver, and one is we're saying needs to essentially be fired because he's not performing. And it really does show that car performance is such a huge factor in people's careers.
Yeah, definitely. I still think Bottas, compared to Albon, is doing a much better job. Personally, I think the time delta between the two teammates, if you compare Bottas and Hamilton and then Albon and Verstappen, is a lot. Bottas is a lot closer over the course of this season. I know he's had half a second off in qualifying this time round, but usually he hasn't been that far behind, and especially in race pace. He stays with Hamilton to the likes of 5 or 6 seconds. Albon is 40 seconds down the road, or 25, I think, this time round. So I think Albon definitely does deserve the criticism more because he isn't performing even to the likes of Bottas at the moment. And you make a good point. If the likes of Ricardo was in Red Bull, Mercedes would probably be scratching their head going, do we need to get a Verstappen or someone of that talent in with Hamilton in order to win the Constructors' title, which would obviously make much better viewing for us. And that's the risks that they'd have to take. I think even having Rosberg and Hamilton together was a slight risk because they have this history, and as much as they were friends, they've been rivals all their entire careers.
Yeah, and they had the contact in a few races, whereas we've never. A point you mentioned at the very start of this podcast was, when has Bottas not been leading into turn 1 and beaten Hamilton in a race? I genuinely can't think of one off the top of my head, and I'm sure people are writing in the comments that there is one, but it's certainly not enough for me to remember one.
I cannot think, even ever, where Bottas has had better pace than Hamilton and overtaken him on the track.
Yeah.
I can't think. I think he's got close.
There's been races where he's obviously beaten Hamilton in qualifying. Russia is a good example where he's just quicker around that track. But in terms of Bottas chasing Hamilton and really pushing him to try and get that win, can't see it. But then interestingly enough, during that race, Bottas, I think, did he ask for more power? And they said no, not
he did,
not
yeah,
against
the one push or something, that
not when we're 1-2. So I mean, if that doesn't get in his head that he's a number 2 driver, then nothing will, I guess. Interesting.
Right, let's move on from the Mercedes duo and let's go to the Giovinazzi and George Russell crash. Quite a scary one, especially when we saw the aftermath of it. We didn't even see the lead up to it, and it turns out that Giovinazzi just lost the car, crashed into the wall, came back across the track. Tyre hits Russell, which could have easily been a much scarier impact, but thanks to the halo and things like that and the safety features of the Formula One car, it didn't turn out to be at all bad, which was brilliant to see. B's 37K says, why was the session not red flagged after the crash today? It was rather dangerous and could have resulted in serious car damage. I thought when I saw that it was going to be a red flag, if I'm honest. I genuinely didn't think that they would take the safety car pack through that.
Yeah, really, really strange. So I was reading about this, and shout out to race fans who interviewed Michael Massey after the race. And there's a quote from him that says, the marshals did a great job clearing a path in the first instance quite quickly. Once the safety car line went through, there was a very clear path through there. So in my view, a red flag was not necessary. personally, I don't agree with that. There's debris absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
And you saw how slow, I think it cut to the leaders, Hamilton and
yeah.
Verstappen at one point, and they were really tiptoeing through. And there was
poor Bottas.
there was no
not even going to put him in the leaders pack
there was
anymore.
no line there, was there, for them to take? No. And obviously, people changed tyres because it was a safety car. But there were people out there that were still on the tyres that started the race, Gasly and Perez, so they might have picked up a puncture. So, yeah, strange call, but thankfully, like you say, the drivers were okay thanks to the halo. Very strange to see a wheel tether fail, but I guess there's only so much it can do. And now, thankfully, that we've got the halo, it did exactly what it needed to do. But George seemed very shaken up in his team radio, didn't he? He looked very out of breath, and I imagine it just completely shocked him to turn into a corner where there's no kind of rain or anything. Like, you wouldn't expect anyone to be off there, and then he sees a wheel kind of flying towards his car.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a scary thing, and I think that team radio was pretty much straight after it had happened. So I can imagine, full of adrenaline, and then having a wheel flying towards your car is going to be a very scary thing. So thankfully they were both okay, because, not going to lie, I feared the worst when I saw the state of Giovanazzi's car. I was thinking that at least one of them was going to be hurt,
Yeah.
but thankfully they weren't. So that was just a quick thing on that. Moving on to Ferrari. Let's talk about Ferrari. There were lots of memes and internet's best reactions about how bad Ferrari are, and let's talk a little bit about how bad they were. Joachim Jepsen says, how long has it been since Ferrari last did so bad as today?
Yeah.
Got that answer, Tommy, I imagine?
Well, I looked into it. I couldn't scroll through every single race for the last 20 years, but there's obviously been plenty of races where they've retired, both crashing into each other, like Austria, for example. But in terms of pace, the one that springs to mind is 2009 Abu Dhabi, and Kimi finished 12th and Fisichella was 16th, and that was just genuine. 2009 was quite a weird year where everyone was really close, especially at the end when Braun's double diffuser advantage wasn't so strong. And they just finished 12th and 16th in a dry, normal Abu Dhabi race where nothing really happened. So for the fact that they finished 13th and 14th when it didn't rain, they didn't get a strategy particularly wrong, not hugely wrong anyway, in terms of that they could have done much better. No rain, no damage, just no pace at all, and even Kimi beat them.
Yeah, Kimi Räikkönen beat both of the Ferraris, which is quite a nice little story for Kimi, I suppose. I bet he took a little bit of not happiness, but
there is a meme going around, which I will stress for people, because a lot of people believed it was actually true, of Kimi Räikkönen passing Vettel, I think it was, down the straight, and someone's put it in Premiere or whatever and added Kimi's laughing as he passes him down the straight, but that is not his team radio, for just to point that out.
I wish it was though. I imagine there probably was a little smirk, a little smug face. I saw a few memes about that and Jeremy Clarkson, and it's time for my smug face, which is good. But yeah, Ferrari, it's going to go from bad to worse when they go to Monza, where you cast your minds back a year ago, and they've had one of the most sensational wins with Charles Leclerc, and now we are genuinely discussing the fact that they may not make it out of Q1.
Which we joked about in the last podcast,
which we misread, didn't we? Well, we didn't misread. We read it and then assumed they meant Q3, but they were genuinely asking Q2, which was a very good question after all that.
Yeah, because they were. I mean, it's mad to think that after Q2, we said it in our live video that we do on YouTube now, the watch along. We were almost like, they've saved it. That's actually a pretty good result. Ferrari finishing, were they 14th and 15th? I can't remember exactly, or 13th and 14th.
In the race?
No, in qualifying.
I think it was
13, 14, 13, 15, can't remember.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow, they've both got into Q2. That's actually pretty good, because in free practice 3, they were 17th and 20th. So Is absolutely mad. They just struggled with everything because from what I heard, it wasn't actually weirdly the straight that was that much of a problem, even though obviously Leclerc got passed by literally everyone in that race. The second sector, because they were trying to compensate for their lack of straight line speed, they were setting up the car so they weren't a complete sitting duck on the straight, even though they were, and just completely messed up the middle sector as well. So they were actually unbelievably slow in the second sector.
Yeah, I guess they were almost trying to not make it seem like the power unit was all of the problem. And that's why they were trying to be at least a little bit quick in the first and third sector. And obviously Charles Leclerc had a great start, going from 13th on the grid to P8, but then obviously falling back on the soft tyres, and then he did have a pretty bad strategy, to be honest. But yeah, it's very interesting because obviously, yeah, you would imagine if they're lacking speed, they would try a skinny setup and hope for the best that they're decent in the middle sector, but it's just not working for them, is it? It's quite sad to see Ferrari so far down when we really wanted them at the front of the field and fighting Mercedes, but
yeah,
what can you do? It's going to be like this, Ferrari fans, unfortunately, for another year and a half.
Yeah, we've not actually mentioned Carlos Sainz, who was didn't even start the race and then spotted watching the kind of chaos
with his head in his hands a little bit. I hope that wasn't cut out of context and he actually was kind of reacting to the Ferrari being passed.
Yeah. Because I agree. I hope that was genuine and not a kind of cheeky thing from the race director trying to sort of maybe like ridicule him a little bit.
But yeah, I'm sure Carlos isn't too sad. You know, I said this in IBR. He's going to Ferrari. I'm sure that is a childhood dream for everybody. So he's not going to be the saddest person in the world, especially if he's able to see this through. Okay, he might have a difficult season next year, but then he goes into the new regs. Hopefully still, is very much a Ferrari team member, and then he can start to look forward again.
If anything, in 2021, he's got no pressure because the car's going to be useless.
Exactly.
So
he won't be fighting for wins. And it'll give him a good sort of time to get used to the team and just try and utilize everything he possibly can out of that car. So yeah, maybe it's not the worst thing ever for Carlos Sainz. Next up, we
the now traditional part of the podcast.
Yeah, we have it every single time when we talk about weather, the rain. Where was it? 100% chance of rain going into Sunday, and we didn't get it, did we?
We did not. 100% chance of rain. It was on the Monday, and then it kind of lessened, but it still managed to absolutely chuck it down the second the race finished. Every single time.
Why? I mean, I saw the weather forecast and I was like, yep, it's going to rain after the race, isn't it? And
there is actually just a genuine theory, isn't there, about something about not pollution, but the kind of heat all the paddock and the cars give up from doing a race. Because I remember watching a TV show where they were talking about that there's a scientific reason why it rains on weekends and a bank holiday, and it's because all the traffic and stuff during the week, the heat rises up and something to do with the clouds anyway, and then it can't rain because of all that happening, and then once it's all calmed down, it chucks it down. And I wonder if there really genuinely is something in Formula One that's because surely it cannot be a coincidence that. I mean, how many times has this happened? It feels like it's every race now. It genuinely does.
It does. It feels more so now than it has ever before, and I don't know why. I feel like we're just cursed. Michael Grimwoo5 says, what sort of voodoo have Mercedes used to keep rain off track all season? I mean, even at Spa, the most changeable conditions you could ever wish for around Spa. It's a huge track. Sometimes it can be raining in certain parts of the track. We didn't get any of it.
I saw.
I don't know. They've clearly got some dry dance people rather than rain.
Yeah. Funnily enough, they were actually set up for rain because they were, I think it was practice. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think in practice, they changed Hamilton's rear wing because originally they were trying a different setup. And it really was kind of, I mean, Ricardo completely gambled on it being dry and it paid dividends. And I've seen some interesting interesting takes and articles and stuff that if Red Bull had done a dry setup and gone it won't rain. Obviously, that Verstappen would have been a sitting duck if it had rained, but if it hadn't, maybe he could have won that race because he would have had a skinny.
Really?
I mean, if he had Ricardo's rear wing on those safety car restarts, he was only 4 seconds off Bottas. He may have had a genuine chance to win that race if he'd done a dry setup, but unfortunately they both went for the same thing, and it didn't rain. So, whap, whap.
No, it did not. Maybe next time. Maybe for Monza we'll get some rain, or we go to the next track, don't we, and hope for the best. But either way, I think if Mercedes was set up for the rain, we still wouldn't really have had much of a mix up for the win, unless they got really unlucky with when the rains came down. But yeah, interesting. Right, let's talk about Gasly. Great drive. I mean, the overtake he did on Perez was nothing short of sensational and very dangerous if you want to look at what Perez was doing. And obviously Gasly was given driver of the day as well, which I feel like Daniel Ricciardo deserved it just as much. But that's not to take away from Gasly's pretty awesome drive as well. Tess_Carol says, hot take, Gasly's move on Perez is better than Webber on Alonso, as Gasly is in a worse car on hards and Perez didn't just come out of the pits before he made the move.
I saw this and I read it and was like, yeah, I think you're right, actually. And then I watched Webber's move and was like, no, Webber's move is.
I'm pretty sure they were almost side by side into Radion, no?
Webber and Alonso, he literally dives up the inside and they're pretty much wheel banging on the apex of Eau Rouge, like the left hand bit at the bottom, which we all know.
Whereas the move was done slightly earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah,
with this
but
one.
I mean, the fact that he kept his foot in when Perez was trying to squeeze him into the wall.
I mean, to be fair, what else can you do in that situation? Like, Gasly is very much committed to this.
Yeah.
And they're side by side, and Perez is just coming over and over and over. I'm actually surprised that Perez didn't get a penalty for that, or at least investigated, because that was unbelievably dangerous.
He gave him a car. He gave him a car's width, but
he gave him a car's width and 1 millimetre.
Yeah, it was literally a car's width. Where if Gasly had moved his steering wheel the tiniest bit to the left, it would have been an absolute plane crash. So
yeah, that would have been one of the most horrific incidents. I don't know what it is with Perez and that part of the track. He just doesn't seem to know where the wall is.
Yeah, because I watched it back because I couldn't actually remember the Ocon incident too well, and
yeah. It was earlier on, wasn't it?
It was, but it was earlier on. But what I'd completely forgotten about is there's an incident where Perez actually did it to Ocon exactly how he did it to Gasly, but squeezed him even more before that incident happened. I'd completely forgotten about this. But before they had their crash a few laps earlier, Perez had done the same thing, but this time didn't leave a car's width. And obviously Ocon crashed, like they banged wheels, and somehow Ocon managed to get through even though he didn't have a car's width and their wheels bounced off each other. But yeah, Perez really kind of, I don't know, he was on an odd strategy, but it's no excuse to try and put your rival in a wall. And yeah, you don't want to say it, but with all the kind of Hugh Bear stuff and that being sort of like the corner that he sadly perished, I mean, it's crazy. It's really crazy that they would kind of really squeeze each other like that.
Yeah, I'm completely a fan of
we want hard racing. Yeah,
hard racing, wheel to wheel racing, wheel banging and whatnot. But for me, that is as bad as what Schumacher did to Barrichello.
Yeah,
because he squeezed him to a wall. I know it was more of an aggressive move from Schumacher defending from Barrichello that time, but Perez has almost put him in the wall, and that would have been a monumental incident. If
they'd connected wheels, he could have been launched, and that's obviously a wall.
So for me, I'm surprised the stewards didn't even look into it or give Perez a warning or anything like that. Obviously, it was an amazing overtake, and I'm not taking anything away from Gasly, of course, but yeah, for me, it just didn't sit right how close that was. But either way,
yeah.
maybe it's because of Spa and what it now kind of holds with Antoine Hubert and that horrible incident, which again, was lovely tributes and things that were going out on social media, and of course what Formula One did as well was really great to see. But yeah, maybe I'm just a little bit more tetchy now that obviously that's happened last year. That maybe just Perez needed a little bit more common sense in that situation. Either way, they got through absolutely fine, so that's all that matters.
And Gasly winning driver of the day. Well, we often joke that it is a bit of a pity vote. Maybe it was nice for him to win it on that weekend of all weekends when he was a close personal friend of Hubert and had the amazing tribute helmet and stuff. And it takes a lot of I imagine it takes a lot of mental strength from someone like Gasly, and Charles Leclerc obviously did it last year by winning the race, when it obviously will no doubt affect everyone, especially when they've got a minute of silence before the race to reflect. For Gasly to put in a drive like that was very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, emotionally must be very difficult. And I'm completely for the minute silence and paying respect, but again, before a race, it's just an interesting one, isn't it? Where I think we discussed this last year, where the drivers, they feel immortal when they're in the cars. They absolutely go 100% all the time. But when you're made to reflect on your own existence and somebody else who's unfortunately lost their life last year, I think, I'm not a psychologist, but mentally that must be a very difficult thing to then surpass just before the start of a race.
I was thinking the very same, because obviously it needs to happen. There needs to be some kind of tribute to Hubert, no doubt. But like you say, the Formula 2 drivers, they're like 18, 19 years old, and they've got to stand there and basically reflect on someone literally dying in the race they're just about to do the year before. It's a lot. It's a lot on them, and I'm surprised that not many people have had this conversation whether it is the right thing to do right before the race. There's no doubt that there needs to be some kind of tribute, but when's the best time for it? Maybe.
Yeah, I can't imagine any F1 driver wants to come out, or F2 driver wants to come out and say, I don't want to do a 1 minute silence for somebody who's passed away, because
that is
obviously that could be taken out of context. It could, all sorts of stuff. But at the same time, I think it does need to be reviewed. Maybe obviously it's different when it's football, because they're not putting their lives on the line when they're then going out and playing their sport. So I feel like it should be reviewed. But when is the best time? That'll be the big talking point.
Yeah.
Hunt Brothers F1 very quickly said, was Perez out of order for his defence on Gasly into Eau Rouge? Yes, I think we can both agree on that, right?
Yes, too much. There's an interesting video where Gasly's watching it on the Sky Pad with Anthony Davidson, if you've seen that, and he pauses it. And Gasly's like, "Oh my word, he really squeezed me." And then Davidson's like, "Oh no, it gets worse." Plays it, and he creeps over even more. And they're so close to hitting tires, it's insane.
Yeah, it's frightening. If you haven't seen it, go and check out that clip or the screenshot. I'm sure it's on social media somewhere, because it is ridiculous. Right, Tommy, play the jingle.
Now it's time for ABCDF1.
Perfect. Here we are, ABCDF1 time. Let's go straight into it. Let's start with Nicholas Latifi. We're going to go from the bottom. Yeah, mix it up a little bit. Nicholas Latifi, I'm going to solidly say a D. Wasn't anywhere near Russell's pace and was very much kind of not even there.
Oh, actually, yeah. In qualifying, he was not on it, was he?
Nope.
Okay, yeah, D is fine.
Okay, we can just move past the boys quickly. George Russell, obviously, he had that impact. He had a good qualifying, got into Q2 again, and was a complete passenger in that. So we can't take any points away from him in terms of our grade.
Yeah, so I think it's got to be a B. Based on
solid B for Russell.
Qualifying. Who'd have thought last year that he'd be racing a Ferrari, and it wasn't the fact that he'd been promoted to Mercedes.
I'd love to have known if he would have beaten the Ferraris as well in that race.
Yeah.
Because he was right with Kimi Räikkönen, wasn't he? So he was right
that's
behind.
Very true. We were robbed of that.
He was right behind him, wasn't he? Kimi Räikkönen. Yeah, because Kimi got through and then Russell got caught up in it.
Yeah.
Romain Grosjean.
Decent race, actually. credit where it's due. I was looking back on it, and I want to give a fair grade to everyone. He outqualified Magnussen by half a second. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And almost got Leclerc. Unfortunately, made a little mistake. So I think it's a B for Grosjean.
Okay, we'll give Grosjean a B. Why not? Let's hand out a B. Lovely. I think it's probably his first B of the season, to be honest.
Yeah, Magnussen.
Kevin Magnussen, he had a pretty awesome start.
Yeah,
making up 5 positions on lap 1. But I didn't really see much from him after that because he kind of lost all those positions. And
yeah, poor weekend. I think it's a D because despite the good start, he was. You can't be being beaten half a second by Romain Grosjean in qualifying. I'm sorry.
How far was he behind in the race?
Good question. Let me have a look.
Whilst we're in this brief interval, make sure you check out the Internet's Best Reactions. If you haven't already, go check it out on our YouTube channel. Lovely. Tommy, do you have the results?
I do. Magnussen started 20th and finished 17th.
That's not what I asked. I said, how far did he finish behind Grosjean?
Oh, sorry. I have no idea. I've got... no, I genuinely don't know how far he finished behind Grosjean. I've got a different result set.
All right. Well, whilst you talk to the audience for 10 seconds, and I'll find out for you.
So interestingly, it says here that while we don't have the result, Magnussen was half a second a lap slower than Grosjean throughout the weekend on his ideal lap. So I think he's worthy of a D, but we shall persist in finding out how far he was behind. But he was 2 places behind. He finished behind Latifi. Come on, let's just give him a D.
Okay, we'll give him a D, finish behind Latifi. I can't be bothered to search anymore. Right, Giovinazzi.
F.
Well, you've got to give him an F, yeah, because he just crashed. He was ahead of Kimi, doing all right, but then he ran out of talent, as I said in IBR. And crashing there was very interesting.
Yeah. Is it me, or has Giovinazzi crashed on his own accord more times than any Formula One driver recently?
Past Maldonado.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's very rare now that you get races where someone, without making contact with anyone or there's rain, where they just lose the car. It seems such a rarity now in Formula One. And Giovinazzi has done that a lot. And that's actually, he did it last year. I didn't actually, someone mentioned it, that he now has a 100% record at Spa of losing it on his own and DNFing. So...
Yeah, Giovinazzi is like me on the F1 game where you're just pushing too hard to try and find the limits. But unfortunately for Antonio, he's in real life and
didn't have
can't just reset to track and go again.
Yeah, as a teammate telling him he was the best teammate, mate.
Wrong part of the track.
Oh, yeah.
F for Antonio. Kimi had a good race, beat both the Ferraris.
Underrated. Very underrated drive.
Can we give him an A?
We can give him an A. Both Ferraris in that rubbish car, 16th to 12th. Well done, Kimi.
No points, but pride.
Yeah.
We love a bit of pride. Lance Stroll. He had quite a quiet race, didn't he?
Yeah. I think you've got to give Stroll and Perez a C here because very disappointed with Racing Point. Absolutely bottled my prediction, which we'll go into later. But yeah, they were nowhere. Really surprising that they just didn't seem to have the pace at all here.
No, they didn't.
To say they've got
Lance Stroll finished
Mercedes.
9th and Perez 10th, which was...
not good.
Not the best result for somebody that we thought they were going to come in and potentially challenge for a podium. But hey, my point about the fact that they've changed their philosophy completely.
It was a valid point.
It was a very valid point. Thank you very much, Tommy. So Stroll and Perez both C's. Obviously Perez. Well, I kind of want to give Perez a D after that horrendous move on Gasly.
Yeah, the strategy wasn't his fault, but I think he deserves a downgrade for being a bit naughty.
Yeah, naughty Perez gets a D. Kvyat,
he's in trouble. I mean,
yeah,
he
P11.
Yeah, not good.
How far did he finish off Gasly? 23 seconds. So yeah, that's going to have to be a D, I think, for Kvyat as well.
He's in trouble. Yuki Sonoda won the F2 race. And
he did after Mazepin. Not Mazepin.
It was Mazepin got a penalty.
It was Mazepin, yeah, it was.
And yeah. Interestingly, Helmut Marko even has been quoted as saying Kvyat kind of needs to pick up the pace. Like his performance has not been what they expected when he was getting
He's tailed
asked.
off, hasn't he?
So
He's tailed off.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if Sonoda's in that car next year if he keeps getting trounced by Gasly the way he's doing. C or
Let's
a D?
see.
I don't know.
Let's give him a D. 23 seconds off your teammate. Not for me. You're
Okay,
not getting a
that's
C if
fair
you're
enough.
23 seconds off. Actually, let me make sure that Perez didn't finish 23 seconds.
Yeah,
No, he didn't.
thinking that.
He finished half a second behind Stroll.
Okay.
So that's fine.
That's fine.
So Gasly, let's give him a solid A.
A. Yeah, his qualifying unfortunately let him down after we lauded how good he was in qualifying, and then he got beaten by Kvyat. But fair play. A really good drive. Really, really good drive.
Decent 8th place and made the hards work, which was a bold strategy, Cotton, wasn't it?
It was.
But it paid off, and the hards were actually a pretty good tyre, weren't they?
Yeah, and he that AlphaTauri looked very quick down the straight. They obviously nailed setup with that as well. So Gasly,
who would have thought a Honda engine would be saying that they're quick down a straight? But here we are, 2020 things. So Gasly, we'll give him an A. Ocon, he's verging on an A, but I think a B is probably fairer for Ocon.
Yeah,
22 seconds off Ricardo, so he's not getting an A.
I'd written A, but let's be honest, that car is very, very good. The fact that he beat Albon definitely helps him, but the gap to his teammate when Ocon is a very highly rated driver, I think,
But better. It has to be said, he had a better weekend, didn't he?
It would be a B+ if we had B+, but we don't.
We don't do that because that causes confusion. But I think, definitely Ocon, much improved. I think the fact that he was stuck behind Albon a lot for a long time didn't help his race and his overall gap to Ricardo at the end. But I think a more promising weekend for Ocon for sure.
Yep.
So we'll give him a B. Ricardo, A star, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt.
Easy.
One of the easiest A stars I've ever given out.
Genuinely,
18 seconds off the win.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and how many seconds off a podium was it in the end? Like 2, 3, something like that. So
it was 3.4 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So I genuinely don't think there's been many performances this year that deserve as much as that. Like A star, easy. What a drive.
Easy peasy. Well done, Danny Rick. Hopefully Monza will bring you that podium and Cyril Abitbol that tattoo.
Yeah.
Lando Norris, quite a quiet race as well for Lando.
But
I think that he probably
he
got the most he could out of that McLaren, to be honest. So I want to give him a B.
Yeah, B.
Because he had quite a slow start to the race and then ended up finishing P7, kind of coming through at the end. Again, the McLaren was another car that was quite strong, wasn't it, on the tyres towards the end of the race, whereas everybody else was seeming to struggle.
Yeah, and I think they'd risked a dry setup as well, so it would have been very interesting to see how Sainz had done because he was in a better grid spot. But yeah,
he was.
Lando B.
Yeah, so Lando B. Sainz we cannot give a grade to, unfortunately. So
can we not? It messes with the standings, though. Should we just give him a B because his?
But yeah, he had a good. Yeah, I guess we give him a B because he had a good qualifying.
Yeah.
Okay. Sainz a B. Alex Albon.
Right, Alex Albon, we're going to sound like a broken record, but it is exactly the same situation where we had so many messages again saying that his strategy was wrong and why is he always on a rubbish strategy? And yes,
it's because of his qualifying.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm, isn't it? Because yes, they probably should have gone hards instead of mediums at the end, but he's in that situation to not be on the same strategy as Max because he's not he's not done it, and they want to do something different because why not? If he can't be up there, look what happened. In fact, no one's really mentioned this, but in Austria they did something different and he nearly won the race, so it could happen again. Yeah, so they might as well gamble.
I don't personally buy Red Bull shafting Albon.
No.
I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's purely down to qualifying, putting himself in that situation where he has to overtake Renaults, he has to overtake McLarens and other situations. So they had to try something different. Yeah, the mediums were definitely not the right tyre in terms of the longevity towards the end of that race. But if they put him on hards, he probably would have just sat behind the Renaults and not been able to do anything.
Yeah.
So he'd already had that part of the race to try and get past them, and he didn't. He only got past Ocon in the safety car because of the the really good pit stop from the Red Bull mechanics. So, yeah, for me, I don't buy Albon being shafted at all. He's being given the opportunity. If he does better in qualifying and he's not out qualified by Danny Rick, although obviously Danny Rick was very close to Verstappen, so we'll let him off for that. But yeah, it's not. Red Bull have to try something different, as you say. Austria is a great example of that, and just do better in qualifying. Albon, be better in race pace, be behind Verstappen, and then they'll just have a like for like strategy, won't they?
Yeah. There's no doubt that car is more suited to Verstappen. They've built the team around him, but he needs to do better. Simple as that.
I mean, when you ride on board with Max Verstappen, I wouldn't say that the Red Bull is. After just watching it all the time, it doesn't. It's not like Max is kind of tooling around like it's a Mercedes, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
It is a proper wrestling job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting. Now we get to the Ferraris, which I guess we need to move around in ABCDF1
you
now.
missed Verstappen out.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, sorry, Max Verstappen A.
Next.
Yeah.
Every race.
Now we move on to the Ferraris, and I think we need to move them in ABCDEF1 because they're definitely not the second fastest team. But we should have had them we should have had them before Alfa Romeo and after Haas.
Wow, yeah.
But Vettel, C.
Yeah.
And Leclerc, C.
Yeah. It's a difficult one with Leclerc because I think Leclerc did better than Vettel despite the result. However, there really was nothing he could do, was there?
No.
He got an amazing start, and unfortunately, you just knew, despite that amazing start, that he was not going to stay there because all the cars behind him would just absolutely punish him on the straight. And then again, I guess Ferrari just risked something with strategy. But again, weird calls during the race where they didn't know what to do. Vettel was asking for strategies again, and they were saying Plan C,
Vettel dropping
Plan
some
D.
expletives as well, wasn't he? It wasn't even just what's the strategy, it was what's the effing strategy, or whatever it was.
Yeah, nearly collided again. Vettel was no way
That was so close.
Right, here's the theory. Do you think that they were making their strategy around the fact that the cars, they didn't want them to be on the same part of the racetrack because it would just be even more embarrassing if they crashed into each other, which it looked like they were going to do at the only stage when that actually happened?
I think they were just going split strategy just purely down to the fact that hoping that one of them would work, because if they're both on the same strategy,
just try anything.
Yeah, literally, they're doing a Haas.
Put wets on and hope
the
rain actually arrives on the last lap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They put Charles on softs probably to try and make up a few positions, which he absolutely did, and he had a great start. But that Ferrari just doesn't have the pace. And people might be wondering, why are we only giving them Cs? Because it's related to their driver performance. It's not Ferrari are terrible, and therefore we're going to give them an E. We're understanding that Ferrari is not a good car at the moment, and then comparing the performance to that. So I think, Vettel and Leclerc both deserve Cs, because that's about where the Ferrari apparently deserves to be.
Yeah.
Valtteri Bottas, I want to give him a
B.
I was going to say C, but I think B is probably fairer.
He wasn't that far. I think it would have been a C if he'd got beaten by Verstappen again. Or even maybe like 10, 20 seconds off Hamilton. But yeah,
absolutely. And then Lewis Hamilton, I think A star
because of his qualifying again, just absolutely trounced Bottas, and that's normally the only bit where Bottas can challenge him, and he absolutely
and then he completely managed the race as well. I don't think he was really ever in trouble.
But what about his loss of power and how his tyres were going to explode in the last 5 laps?
Oh my god! When he said that, and I was looking at the time intervals, I genuinely thought his car was braking.
Yeah,
because it was coming down and down. Bottas was within a second. Bottas, of course, then didn't take any advantage of that because why would he? Hamilton had it completely in control after that because whenever Bottas closed up, Hamilton just went, see ya.
Apart from that one moment where he went over the chicane, and then Bottas
did the same thing. Bottas.
Yes.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So there you go. That's ABCDEF1. Let's move on to the Belgian Grand Prix predictions. So I predicted Vettel and Ferrari would fall out again.
I mean, he swore at them, so I'll give you that.
We'll say that's a solid point. And Stroll beats Perez, which he also did. So that's a solid maximum points from me. Tommy?
We won't go in.
Do you want to read yours?
No, I don't. Racing Point Podium, nope. Vettel announced as an Aston Martin driver, nope. Moving on.
The fans, Bradster 22, Verstappen will retire, resulting in an Albon podium.
Nope.
No. Even if Verstappen did retire, Albon wouldn't have got a podium. Cloffy09, safety car in the first 10 laps.
All right, this is hilarious. Guess when the safety car was?
11th lap?
Yep.
Sorry, Clochy, that's 0 points.
0 points. Gutted.
Right, Italian Grand Prix predictions. I have gone for a Renault podium, and I have also gone for a Ferrari out in Q1.
Nice. Okay.
Tommy?
So if anyone's seen my Twitter, they'll know that I'm just... I jinx everything. I'm doing this for the
greater good. But the thing is,
good.
Tommy, you're not allowed to say it out loud. You're not allowed to say that you're trying to jinx something because that doesn't work.
We did it with Ricardo. It's fine. So my prediction is 2 Mercedes and Max on the podium.
Okay.
And qualifying, there will be some slipstream controversy again. They won't have learnt their lesson. Oh, sorry.
Very vague.
Sorry,
that'll be like
Vettel and Ferrari fall out again.
Yeah, it's vague when you do it. It's not vague when I do it. Okay, all right. Some sort of controversy. I'm sure you'll be like, oh, I've got a bit of understeer. Yeah, that was to do with slipstream. That's controversy. 1 point.
Exactly.
And fans, Paulo CT Lighter, Sainz P3. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's see. And Thomas J Stamp, Ferrari get lapped. I mean, that's a point.
They didn't get lapped at Belgium, but I guess the track's really long. So
very long. I'm going to award a point. That's it. Ferrari, well done, Thomas. You've got a point. And that's it. We're done.
We are.
Anything else to add, Tommy?
Despite all the moaning and negativity, we've got another race this week, so that is good.
We haven't moaned.
Well, not moaned, but obviously it wasn't the greatest race, so I think we should be happy that it's such a tight schedule now that we've got so many exciting races coming up. Let's enjoy the fact that we're going to new venues soon, a lot of uncertainty. I'm really excited for the rest of the calendar now. It's really, really, really good calendar.
Let's hope we get good racing.
Absolutely.
Hey, so there you go. Thank you so much to Tommy for joining us once again for this WTF1 podcast. If you want to let us know any suggestions, hashtag WTF1 podcast. Make sure to give us 5 stars or a thumbs up, or wherever you are in the world, please do give us all the love and support, because we are, I don't actually know where we are in the charts anymore, Tommy, but thank everybody.
We were the 12th leisureliest podcast, but I don't know.
12th leisureliest podcast in the UK, which is very leisurely and very lovely to hear. So thank you again for all the support on this podcast. It's crazy to think, because I don't think many people watch this, but apparently people do. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I say, get involved, hashtag WTF1 podcast. And that is pretty much it. Thank you to Tommy, and we will see you in a week's time for the Italian Grand Prix Monza edition, where we will be celebrating a Ferrari win.
Ferrari 1-2, you mean?
Yeah, Ferrari 1-2, maybe, if everybody else retires.
Exciting.
Are we supposed to get rain?
Let's not talk about it.
It's going to be a sunny day.
We're banning the word rain from the next podcast, and remind us of it, because if we mention
precipitation.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Bye, Tommy. I'm waving at you.
Again. Bye.
Love you, miss you. Bye.